All right, welcome everybody. Looks like we are up on X, coming to you live, simulcasted from Discord. This is our Happy Monday developer Q&A with the Quai Network team. Thank you everybody for joining us. Hope you had an amazing weekend. Is it fall weather where you're at right now? It's still pretty freaking hot out here in Austin, Texas. But the grind doesn't stop. I'll be your host and I guess questionnaire for today. Engineers are busy traveling, spreading the mission and vision of Quai Network worldwide, and or grinding it out on Project Soap, trying to get that over the line for the deadline. So today, if you have any and all questions about building on Quai Network, I'll be the man of the hour to answer any and all of those questions. Maybe Christopher might join me on stage, or Veronica. She's back from a much needed vacation as well. We'll see if they come up, but otherwise, feel free to join us here in Discord. Let me pin a tweet for those of you hanging out with us here on X. Thanks for joining. But we are actually simulcasting from Discord. So let me get this tweet pinned for you all so you can come join us in Discord. It's already a happening space. Got some of the OGs in the community chopping it up. Already asking questions. Little concerned about my AV setup, perhaps. But it looks like we're rocking and rolling now. Real quick, if you're hanging out with us on X, drop me an emoji just to give me the confidence that you can hear me all right. Otherwise, looks like we got Veronica up here in X dropping emojis. Thank you, Veronica. Yeah, this is our developer Q&A. So come by the Discord, ask us some questions. Let us know that you're building on Quai Network. I was actually just hanging out with Quai Squad over in the developer server. They're building something pretty cool. So we were able to help them out. Couldn't drag them to this space though, but maybe they'll show up later. They're also heads down building some cool stuff for the Quai Network ecosystem here. So keep your eyes peeled on the Quai Squad account. Those guys are cooking. And they always have the coolest UIs. I'm a little jealous of their front end skills, I'll admit. I definitely depend pretty heavily on Cursor to help me out on the front end stuff. But we were able to work through a number of challenges they had rolling out their project. Everything from smart contracts to dApps to getting your contract verified on QuaiScan. Drop your questions in the chat, or if you have them over here on Twitter, leave a comment and we'll get around to it shortly. Let me do a quick check over here to make sure everything's running. I just started rambling like a radio DJ, I guess. But let's see here. I'm gonna shoot some folks an invite to come up on stage and speak with us. So keep your eyes peeled for that, folks. And come hop into the Discord server. Oh, I know what I was doing. I need to drop a link to the developer Discord server for you all. It's a great place to get extra help if you are building over on Quai Network. There you go. Nice. Kishore says that I have not seen Quai Squad's mobile skills yet. They are too good. Man. Mobile is a whole nother ballgame when it comes to building apps. So the journey from Web 2 to Web 3 for me was just like wrapping my head around, application asynchronous events on chain, but the chain events are synchronous, and then like having to interact with wallets and all that jazz. That was like a hurdle for me. And then in a previous life, I actually built a full stack VPN platform. And while I couldn't cut getting an iOS app built. I did get an Android app built, and that's a whole nother challenge in itself. Like the rest of the internet, you can generally host your own stuff, but when it comes to building apps that everybody wants to use and has access to, like jumping through the whole Google Play Store, Apple Store hurdles, it's a whole other ballgame. And dealing with Xcode with limited documentation is also a whole nother ballgame. So hats off to Quai Squad, getting some respect from Kishore on their mobile development skills. Admire anybody who's ever built a mobile app before. They're not easy. Rock and roll. All right. Well, it looks like the crowd is growing here. We already got some questions over in Discord, so I'll go ahead and kick it off with the first one from Kishore. He's going to be asking all SOAP community questions here today. Okay, I'll do my best to answer these. But if you guys haven't heard, we recently announced Project SOAP. So I'm going to get that pinned, that tweet pinned up above. If I can find it. And that should have all the details you need to know. Totally acknowledge it's probably not the most clear. We could probably do a better job of clarifying the fine points there. So I expect us to create some more content on that here real soon. But check out that tweet I just pinned on X here in the space if you're wondering what Project SOAP is. Otherwise, let me get a link here for the Discord, folks, and then we'll dive into questions. So, ask your questions, folks. We'll be diving in momentarily. Let me get this tweet here. Here it is. There you go, guys. Project SOAP. We're super excited about it. Check it out. Maybe Kishore's got a question for us to set it up. All right. Oh, apologies, Marisol. Didn't mean to shock you. Yeah. Looks like we were able to work through Quad Squad's issues earlier today. Let's see here. Some newcomers were asking these NFT DApp questions while going through the NFT DApp example. Okay. Appreciate that, Kishore. Thanks for collecting those. Before I kick it off, though, guys, we live stream every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Unfortunately, it might not be the best time for everybody, but it's the time I have available right now. And we're always building something on Quai Network, and we share those repos publicly. So if you're interested in following along and hanging out with us while we build something on Quai Network, check out those live streams. But recently launched the Mojis project, free to mint NFT project over here at Quai Network. I built the NFT project and then asked the community if we should launch it on mainnet, and they said yes. So we fired it off. Go check out themojis.com, and you can mint for free. You just have to, pay for the gas of transaction. All right, diving in. If a transaction involves two smart contracts on different zones, how does the SDK ensure that both succeed or fail together? Interesting question. I'll just state, initially, like, you can't have one transaction that interacts with two different shards at the same time, right? You can either have a transaction generate, an external transaction and go, so you have one cross-shard transaction. That can happen. But if you have two smart contracts, one on two different zones, what the protocol does is we share the address space, right? So like all addresses on shard 1 start with 00, for example, and all addresses on shard 2 start with 0, 1, right? So for a smart contract, like if a smart contract is generating a transaction and the destination is, going from 0, 0 to 0, 1, the protocol automatically generates the cross-shard transaction, right? But if a user with a wallet, say 0, 0, is sending a transaction to 0, 1, that's also another cross-shard transaction. So the user could interact with a smart contract on a different shard. That's probably not very efficient. But what they would likely do is interact with a smart contract on their shard, so a 0, 0 to 0, 0 transaction. And then if necessary, that smart contract might kick a state update over to a second smart contract on a second shard. So that would be a second transaction. Hopefully that makes sense. But ultimately the protocol, not the SDK, is determining whether a transaction is internal or inter-shard, or external intra-shard, just by the addresses that are involved in that transaction. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, moving on. If a dApp needs to execute transactions from multiple accounts, e.g. multisig, does the SDK provide a clean way to manage multiple signers? That's a really good question. I'm not sure if the SDK does that. I'd have to look that up. Yeah, that's something I've never done before, actually. I've never had to participate in a multisig, so maybe that's something we try out on a future live stream. Does the SDK provide a clean way to manage multiple signers? I mean, musigs are, kind of effectively native in the protocol. So I have to imagine the SDK supports it. I would say, like, if Ethers supports it, it's probably safe to say that Quais supports it. Yeah, no, I'd have to go take a look. This is a good question. Great question. All right. Moving right along here. Can developers subscribe to contract events across all zones, or do they need to listen separately for each zone's RPC? Oh man, great question. So let's just provide some context here. So a node on Quai Network can support one or multiple zones, right? Now today, keep in mind, we only have one zone, there's only one shard, right? And the public RPC endpoint is rpc.quai.network, right? And because we're a merge mined hierarchy of chains with zones, being where the state exists, regions being a header block that can connect two zones, and then prime being that, single canonical chain that connects all of them. What we've implemented is pathing on the public SDK. So it's really easy for developers to query specific shards, specific regions, or the prime block, right? So in the future, there could be other RPC endpoints that support every shard in existence. The way the node has been built today is each shard has its own port, right? And so what we've implemented on our public endpoint is pathing in the WebSocket or HTTPS URLs. So you don't need to put in the port number. You can just type /Cypress1, and then you're querying for that specific shard. So in the future, what we'll likely implement is /Cypress2, /Cypress3. And so, how does the dApp listen for events across multiple shards? Right now, my best guess is they will likely need to have multiple providers, one for each shard, and then just like, listen to those multiple providers. But this is like another opportunity for people to, build out more efficient systems. This is, something that the team has kind of backlogged, right? Since, we're going to need some pretty solid throughput on a single shard, right? Before, and that has to be sustained, right? So I think, right now we estimate like a single shard can do 700 transactions per second sustained, right? And beyond that, we'll start to see an increasing uncle rate. Now that increasing uncle rate has to be sustained before the protocol decides to open up the opportunity for a new shard to be mined, right? So we'll have to see. I think the core engineers at one point said 500 TPS sustained before we start prioritizing those things on our roadmap. You'll see all of that get baked into Orchard testnet long before expansion. So all of the builders out there can be more than prepared for supporting multiple shards well before they actually need to. So like if the sharded, and like I totally understand where this is coming from, right? Like as a builder, like I want to plan for the future, and so knowing that this is a sharded architecture, like I want to start building for multiple shards like as soon as possible, and try to wrap my head around it and start like designing protocols to support it and all that jazz. Um, to be frank with you guys, like you're not going to be able to test anything on Orchard in a meaningful way for a very long time, right? We're going to need to sustain a pretty decent TPS throughput on a single shard before like that's actually a reality. So my best advice to developers today who are planning for the future, if you are building a protocol that you want to support across multiple shards, there's really two patterns that you can consider. One is, use an upgradable proxy pattern, right? That gives you the ability to upgrade your smart contract on shard one when the network goes multi-shard. So you can actually test out a net new multi-shard protocol in Orchard and then upgrade your mainnet contract to the architecture that you land on, right? The other, pattern you can do is like just like what Uniswap had V1, V2, V3. I think they're on like V4 now, maybe. Who knows? That's a totally valid way to upgrade your smart contracts and your protocols. Um, Worked for Uniswap, one of the biggest dexes in the industry. It'll definitely work for anybody else out there who generates the user base that Uniswap did. So if it can support that user base, it can support you. That's for sure. Good questions though. Nice. All right. Next question: can the SDK automatically fetch a contract's ABI from an on-chain registry, or must developers manually provide it? Oh my gosh, I love this question. So if you follow our GitHub repo examples, what you're actually doing when you're deploying your smart contract is you are uploading your ABI to IPFS, okay? And then that IPFS hash is submitted along with the compiled smart contract on chain, right? So every smart contract you deploy on Quai Network should have an IPFS hash to the ABI already provided, right? And yes, the SDK does and can grab that IPFS hash and parse that ABI. So if you notice with some of the ecosystem projects on Quai Network today, when you go to interact with it with Pelagus, and you look closely, you'll see that Pelagus actually knows what function you're calling in that transaction, right? So all that's already built for you, right? You just need to follow the hard hat examples on how to deploy. There's Quai's npm node package manager repos that support all of that. And so every time you deploy a smart contract on Quai Network, you should be getting that IPFS hash. That IPFS hash points to your metadata. And then you can also use that metadata to verify your smart contract on QuaiScan or Block Explorer and interact with your smart contract there, right? So that's a really easy way, simple way for developers with limited resources to test things out on testnet. You can deploy to Orchard and verify your smart contract on orchard.quaiscan.io, and then interact with all the functions on QuaiScan. So pretty handy. I like it. But hopefully that answers that question. I forget the exact function in Quais to fetch that ABI. But right now, Pelagus is the only wallet that can interact with dApps on Quai Network. So you don't need to worry about presenting that to the user. The wallet actually does it for you. So pretty cool. All right, moving on. Yash, welcome Yash, Quai Squad in the house, representing. Guys, if you want to have Quai Squad join the X Space, that would be super cool. Would love to encourage folks to follow that account. But Yash states, I've deployed my smart contract at mainnet, and I'm sure I'm using the correct Solidity compiler version and the license identifier. But when I try to verify and publish the contract on the Explorer, it still fails. Dang. What are some common reasons verification fails, even when the compiler and license match? And how can I debug or fix it? Oh man, that's a really good question, Yash. I'll admit, like I saw that issue earlier today, and I have never experienced that. So let's see here. You know what? Let's double check one last thing. Let's double check one last thing. Let me pull up our GitHub repo. You want to make sure your IPFS hash is actually getting compiled into, or really into the package that gets uploaded to the blockchain. So let me find an example here. And what I'm looking for is that hard hat config.js. All right. So take a look at this hard hat config.js. Ping Yash here. And you'll notice there's a metadata section in compilers. Bytecode hash, IPFS, use literal content true. Let's make sure you have that for the correct Solidity version in your hard hat config. You might need to nuke your cache and start over, since we were switching versions in the hard hat config and in the smart contract. Might just be a good idea to delete your cache and start over with a fresh cache. So, oh my gosh, the chat is crazy, guys. Guys, if you're on X, hop into the Discord. It's a lot of fun. All right, man, where were we? I lost my place. Okay. Uh, let's see here. Okay, we were talking about QNS. Okay. Is there a plan to add a decentralized voting system to Quai? Or would that even be a good idea, like a sharded voting system? Interesting question. What I wonder, maybe that's Ebo the third. What are we voting on? I would say DAOs are totally viable on Quai Network. I guess the question is, what are we voting on? All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. Scrolling through here. God, the chat is insane. All right. One dev was crying about using the Pelagus wallet. Oh man, I'm sorry. We're working on it, man. It's not a terrible wallet, guys. Like, honestly, some of these, like MetaMask is just like way too much for me these days. Like after I've been using Pelagus, right? Like, I mean, we're missing some features that I'd love to see NFTs in my wallet, you know, um, all that jazz. We finally got dark mode, so bullish dark mode. But I don't know. Have you guys fired up MetaMask lately? It's just like way too much going on. Way too much going on. It's starting to feel a little scammy. Like, no offense, MetaMask. You're pushing too much. All right. Let's see here. Like Cardano does. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm not super familiar with Cardano. Maybe we're talking about like governance. Oh, you mean like verifying votes on chain for like other governments? Yeah. No, that's an interesting space, man. One of my favorite OG builders in crypto, Amin Soleimani, he was hot on that. A lot of people have been building out solutions for that. Um, I think like we're still struggling with like Sybil resistance, right? Like even WorldCoin had a good idea for Sybil resistance, but then, you know, people just started selling their identities. So that didn't really work out. Um, so it's a great idea. It's a great idea. And there's like a lot of people who have like tried it, right? Um, I just love the fact that, you know, with smart contracts, you know, the concept of DAOs was born. And with the concept of DAOs, we get additional opportunity to oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Experiment with governance, right? Like, you know, governance is this big, super important thing for everybody in their daily lives. But like, how often do you get to actually like experiment and innovate in governance? Very little. It's very difficult to do in the real world, right? But you know, with a minimal amount of resources and you know a few people, you can experiment with a variety of governance frameworks on chain via DAOs. So that's what honestly really got me excited, and how I got into crypto writ large is like I wanted everybody to have access to the cheapest VPN possible. And so being able to create, you know, a nonprofit or a DAO organization for governing that was really what sent me down the crypto rabbit hole. All right, let's hear. Yash says she's checked her hard hat config.js and she's got the same code. Damn. Okay, well, that's good. That's not bad. You definitely need that. And the compiler version is correct. Um, man, I guess my last tip for you right now is yeah, let's clear your cache. Clear hard hats cache, clear like all the artifacts. And let's make sure like the compiler's like compiling the right things, and then IPFS, like we're actually uploading the right stuff to IPFS and getting the right hash. So try clearing the cache. If that doesn't work, um, if you can share, uh, well here's what you should be doing. Like this works on Orchard, right? So instead of like continuously trying to do this on mainnet, like pivot back to Orchard and maybe rebase and try to get it working on Orchard. You should be able to verify a smart contract on Orchard the same way you do it on mainnet. All right, let me know how that goes, Yash. It foolproofs elections. You could link it to Chi holders also. Oh man, I'm gonna avoid that rabbit hole, Ebo the third. I see where you're going. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. We just still have like a Sybil resistance issue, right? Like, I don't know where you live, but here in America, voter fraud is a hot topic. And just imagine like how many wallets you could generate on chain. Um, so you got a civil resistance issue still, but if you can get a acceptable level of civil resistance, right? Like maybe attach a voter ID or a driver's license to an address, and maybe that works. All right, moving right along here. We got some questions from Parabish, thanks to Keyshore. If SOAP goes live, supply of Quai could decrease too, right? Not necessarily. I would say the emissions will change slightly depending on what kind of miner you are. But don't hold me to this. But we still have a controller that's adjusting Quai emissions, and if I go look at the conversion rate right now, oh, it's holding pretty steady. It's still, Chi is still a little overpriced compared to Wrap Chi. Well, then let me double check. Before I speak, we should look at Quai Swap that let's see here. One Wrap Chi on Quai Swap is 21.9, 23 Quai, and in the protocol it's 24.4, 24.5 Quai. Man, that's pretty close. Dang. Well, this not the answer is not necessarily, right? Right? Imagine you have to imagine like emissions is going to be controlled based on the protocol controller that helps stabilize the value of chi compared to Quai by adjusting the emissions of Quai based on whether it's undervalued or overvalued. And then on top of that, there's going to be incentives to mine with a net new algorithm that's kapow over progpow for a limited period of time. And then depending on who is a soap miner and what they're mining, those emissions will be slightly different. So ultimately, what you're getting is a deflationary asset, but Quai's emissions is a logarithmic of difficulty, right? So it'll go up with more hash rate to a point, and then it becomes even more deflationary over time. Net issuance is going to zero. How? Oh, okay. All right. So when we say net zero in the SOAP document, we're not talking about issuance. We're talking about trading, right? So if all the miners are selling, the SOAP mining should be purchasing the same amount, right? So worst case scenario, the impact to price due to trading is net zero, right? But that's worst case when every single Quai miner is selling all their Quai, right? Which we know is not happening, right? So very, very quickly, this will be a net positive to the impacts of trading Quai. So hopefully that answers that question. If Quai scaling is tied to less to tokenomics and more to global hash rate availability, does that mean price is indirectly a function of miner economics across other chains? Let me think about that for a second. So I'll start here, right? Like proof of work economics is inherently different than proof of stake, right? And so for price to go up in a proof of work network, you have to have more user adoption or more users buying than miners selling, right? So with that in mind, in a proof of work network, price is a function of supply and demand, right? You just have to think about like who the players are and what their incentive is. If you're a miner, you got to pay your power bill, right? So you're likely to sell as much as you need to pay the power bill, right? Whereas users could be purchasing to spend on dApps or leverage as a store of value, right? Which is the benefit that Bitcoin has right now, right? More people are buying Bitcoin to use as a store of value than miners selling Bitcoin to pay their power bills, right? And that has been true for a very long time. So that's why you see the price go up, plus the speculation that comes with a fixed supply, right? So that's how I think about it. Hopefully that answers that question. I wouldn't say it's indirectly a function, but yeah, miners play a role in the economies of proof of work networks. What will miner get as a reward? They will get Quai. Pretty simple. If the foundation buys back Quai with donor chain rewards, what factors decide whether those Quai are burned or distributed as a staking reward? Undecided at this time. I'll just state that. There's benefits to both. Now, one creates like a very clear deflationary, result, right? When you burn Quai becomes more deflationary. The other one, providing rewards for stakers, does a couple different things. First of all, it delays selling, right? So if you're staking to earn more, to make a profit, you're still going to sell. You're just going to sell at a later date, right? But the benefit here is that initially the interest earned on that stake is going to be really, really high, right? So with a very high interest provided to stakers, that incentivizes more people to buy Quai and stake their Quai, right? Until a proper interest rate or APY is achieved. And so what that does is that incentivizes a whole lot of liquidity to come into Quai Network. So that's the benefit of providing a reward as a staking reward. So that's something that we will be doing. And then the other one is burning it to create that deflationary result. Both of these are good, but the ratio and the deciding factors have yet to be settled on. So stay tuned for that. All right, great questions, guys. Really appreciate you bringing those forward, Kishore. I'm gonna keep churning through them. Feel free to ping me if you want me to like pivot here. But for equilibrium mining, e.g., $10 worth of Quai and $10 worth of BTC, how is the rate between the two coins determined in practice? Let me think about that one for a second. $10 worth of Quai and $10 worth of BTC. How is the rate between the two coins determined in practice? Not sure I understand that question. Maybe we can expand on that. Ping me, Kishore, if you expand on that. I'm gonna move on. I guess, like what rate and where is it applied is kind of like what I'm not understanding here. Can non-miners lock Quai under the same terms as miners? Or will there be differences in lock periods and reward weights? Great question. Okay, so with the stake and reward that we're talking about, those will probably be slightly different. But effectively, similar outcomes. I think, the initial idea was a 30-day lock. So I think miners have that option. Miners actually have more options. So I would say compared to miners, the options are limited. And then additionally, I don't think there's plans for stakers to be able to tokenize and like resell those. But time will tell. Dr. K and the core engineering team, they're hard at work building out the market incentive design and the game theory behind all of that. One thing is clear though, like this is definitely something that will benefit the long-term price and liquidity of Quai, and really like help mitigate miners who need to sell their tokens for energy costs, and provide a benefit to them with additional store value. So that's cool. Total Quai supply mostly stays the same, correct? Does SOAP effectively make Quai a deflationary asset over time? So Quai is already a deflationary asset. What this does is this expedites that store of value utility by kind of like neutralizing the negative impacts that miners have on selling their tokens. And really this just like speeds up the bootstrapping of a mature market with a lot of liquidity in Quai. So Chi can stabilize, and the best marketing is price action, right? So this is just really just bootstrapping the market we need, not only for Chi, but just general marketing and awareness in a pretty noisy space. I'll just say that. All right, let's see here. I'm gonna scroll down. I think Kishore tagged me. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Let's see here. Where were we? What criteria must be met for a successful rollout from testnet to mainnet? Yeah, I can't speak on that, unfortunately. I am a DApp engineer. An okay smart contract engineer, definitely not a blockchain engineer. So, keep your eyes peeled, keep tuning in to these Q&As, the AMAs. Dr. K and team will enlighten us to all of these specifics real soon. So check out the blog post and the tweet for more details on the timeline. Follow the Quai Network account. Keep your eyes peeled. I also see some of our builders down there in the audience on the X space. So if you're hanging out with us down there, definitely go give Quai Squad and Talkin' a follow. They're cooking some cool stuff, guys. Don't want to miss out on that. All right. Good luck, Yash. Yeah, you should be able to get it working on Orchard. Again, try like deleting your cache and rebasing. Maybe even so IPFS, those hashes are generated based on the name. So maybe try like just to like verify everything's working. Try changing the name of the smart contract on Orchard, and then once everything is working, you should be able to switch the name back and test it one more time before going back to mainnet. All right. Could you maybe, this is from Evo the Third, could you maybe tell us how Chi will become widespread or how you're working on making it usable in the real world? Great question. Okay, so step one, we need mature markets, right? Chi's stability depends on mature markets, right? Like we don't want to depend on central authorities or data providers to give us something to peg the value of Chi to. So in this situation, Chi was designed for mature markets to discover and the value of Chi related to Quai. So step one is building that mature market, right? Bringing a lot of liquidity into Quai, raising awareness. So more mature market makers come into Quai, see the opportunity, and start conducting those activities. So now we have, a good, not only like a stable value of Chi, but a solid supply of Chi, right? So when demand for Chi grows, it can remain stable, right? So that's step one. Step two, once you have stable value and, relative good supply, it's tooling, guys. We got Chi rolling out to Blip here pretty soon. So you'll be able to use Chi as, a transfer of value between individuals, businesses, organizations, all of the above. But I would say from my perspective, the go-to-market strategy is targeting disenfranchised markets, right? Think content creators, folks that don't have access to traditional stable units of value like the US dollar, people in places where they're struggling to maintain value with fiat, all of that. And really targeting those folks and making sure that the tooling works for them, right? If we can get small businesses, home businesses, peer-to-peer payments working, then ultimately what that does is that unlocks untapped economic value globally, right? One of the things I learned while I was a soldier in Afghanistan is just like how resourceful people are with limited resources. And, the rest of the developed world, they don't have that problem. And so if we can unlock the resourcefulness of some of these other, demographics and locations where, people are really innovating, they're just, not having their innovations exposed to the global economy, those people would like kick butt and take names, right? So getting them access to Chi will, kind of like reinvigorate not just like local economies, but the global economy as well. by getting it access to all the innovations happening globally, right? It's really a Chi economy is a true like equal opportunity economy. And so when a bunch of those like, case studies and wins start lining up, right? It's like jet fuel. It's just exponential at that point, right? One of the other stories I'm reminded of is I used to work at a grocery store called Whole Foods here in America, and they had this nonprofit that did micro lending to places around the world that didn't have access to banks or financial education, business education, stuff like that. And they were able to really bootstrap economies that were, effectively disenfranchised either by lack of access to infrastructure or capital, but providing tiny loans to small businesses around the world is definitely a winning strategy. There's just a lot of overhead in the traditional finance system. So Chi is something that could really unlock that. And so I'm really excited for, SOAP to help us bootstrap this market, make Chi more accessible, and then getting everybody's feedback on the tooling, right? Blip is pretty cool. It's got a ways to go. We got more, bugs to work out and some features to implement for Chi. But once that's ready to go, then hopefully, you guys can just take it and run with it. And build out, your own tools, if it makes sense. If, the demand is greater than the foundation can support, then obviously we'll be looking to provide grants where it makes sense as well. So while I'm on that topic, guys, check out our grants program, right? Head over to docs.qu.ai. There are grants available for people building much needed tooling in our young ecosystem here. There's still a lot of opportunity to frankly just kind of like copy paste what's been done in other EVM chains over to Quai. Think, multi-sigs, verifiable randomness, DAO tooling, and there's even like more opportunities that you can use some of the innovations in Quai Network to your benefit, right? Think Nepo POWs, trustless RPCs. I know AlphaMine is working on enhancing decentralized pools, which is super cool. So lots of opportunities out there, folks, for everybody. No matter what you like doing in blockchains, there's an untapped opportunity here at Quai Network for you. Rock on. All right, we're coming up on time. Let me look for a few more questions here. Mobile payment apps. Yep, you got it. IBO the third. You're thinking along the same lines I am, man. Let's see here. Oh man, the chat is on fire. You guys rule. If you're hanging out with us on X, tune in next Monday in Discord. We'll have an X space tomorrow for the community. So if you're building, learning about Quai Network, come up on the space tomorrow, and then we'll be sitting down with Dr. K on Wednesday, where you can just like hammer him on SOAP. We could all learn something together. Okay, here's a question from Crypto Daddy. Can regular retail investors such as myself benefit from storing Quai? If so, what would be the most conducive way to receive benefit? Well, so we're going to be working on that, that locked contract for yield. So that's a good way to benefit, earn yield on your Quai there. We have another partner still building out, tokenized energy bonds. Taking advantage of the miners' tokenized lockups. That's another thing you can participate in. All of these are on the horizon right now. Go get some Quai, hold it in your Tangent wallet, and hang on to your butts. It's going to be a crazy ride here pretty soon, guys. So stay tuned for more. Let's see here. Oh, Yash. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Not really sure what's going on there. Um, Yash, just for sanity's sake, to help me get like better support from the core engineers when they're available. Let's see if you can deploy. I personally haven't used .22 as a version. Let's try rebasing everything under .20 and see if that works. Yeah, let's try that. Let's try, you know, setting both hard hat to .20. Let's mention .20 in the Solidity file, and let's make sure we compile under .20, and then that your metadata also references .20. And let's try that. There might be an issue with .22 in QuiScan. That's probably like, I mean, that's the best I got right now. If that doesn't work, if you could share the repo with either myself or Jonathan, um, we could probably help you out there. All right. A few NFT questions. Can we enforce royalties directly on chain? Man, that's a great question. Um, I want to say yes. Now, personally, like I've never seen anybody actually do that. That would be like a custom transfer function where, you would have to like set some what's the word I'm looking for? You would have to like determine the royalties based off of the value of the transfer, right? So you would either like completely eliminate people being able to like transfer these NFTs freely without, providing a value, or because really like how do you sell an NFT, right? Um, like there's a couple different ways to do it, but the marketplace is really the best way to do it, right? That's a trustless way to like sell your NFT. Otherwise, you're depending on like, like if I want to buy an NFT from you and you own that NFT, right? I'm either going to send you Quai directly and expect you to transfer me the NFT, which is why we have decentralized marketplaces. So like we don't have to trust each other, right? You can list the NFT and then, I could elect to buy it and then the marketplace conducts the transfer for us once the terms have been met. And so it's really up to the marketplace to make sure that the royalties are being paid. And that's kind of like the way it's implemented today. You could enforce it. And well, I mean, I'll say that's how it's enforced currently through the marketplace. If you want to enforce it directly into the NFT smart contract, you might run into some challenges when it comes to like actually communicating that this NFT is for sale. Um, and also, giving the owner the option to sell it and the amount that they want to sell it for, right? And so that kind of like dictates the price at a certain point, depending on how you build it. I'm going to say it's totally possible to do it all in a single smart contract, but it might not make sense. So hopefully that answers that question. Um, how do we add simple exploration tools to discover new art based on trends, collections, artists, etc.? Great question. You need to monitor the blockchain. And that's, again, another huge value add that marketplaces provide, right? So like Quaimark, they have smart contracts for listing and conducting NFT trades, but they're also constantly monitoring Quai Network, looking for new ERC 721s to be created on chain. They're doing, they're reading the blockchain to get information about that, NFT smart contract, how many are available, what's the data, the token URI backing each of these NFTs, is there art associated with them, out of all the metadata available for this particular collection, what are the attributes and the, percentage of rarities of these attributes, all that jazz. Um, so the short answer is you need to monitor the blockchain, right? And there's a couple different ways to do that. Running a graph node or using graph.qu.ai and running your own queries is one way to do it. Another way to do it is, leveraging a data streaming service like Indexing Co. that recently integrated with Quai Network. The caveat to a streaming service is, you're going to have to set up your own database, right? Because what they're doing is they're just streaming live data. And so you can subscribe to a stream, but if you don't store that data, you won't be able to recall it, right? But that's great use case for getting live updates. It could be good for maintaining a live database and updating it as new data comes in. But most of the industry today uses Graph. So check out, I think it's graph.ql maybe, is the protocol. And then we're running our own graph node over at graph.qu.ai that you can query. So hopefully that helps. How does the smart contract ensure determinism in rendering interactive NFTs across different environments, wallets, browsers, and dApps? Ensure determinism. So let's just be clear. Like what an NFT smart contract is storing generally is the supply, the token IDs that exist, some basic metadata associated with each token ID, and the owner of that token ID, right? You can think of an NFT a lot like an ERC20. It's indivisible, right? Um, and so ensuring determinism when it comes to interactive NFTs, is really just like setting the correct state and then maintaining that state or updating that state based on the, functions programmed into that smart contract, right? So if you're concerned, for example, of people rendering an NFT differently, um, you know, really, like, I'll just say, like, nobody wants to do that, right? Like, everybody can query the blockchain for a specific token ID and see, like, the real token URI that backs that. That's why, most people use IPFS, right? So that metadata will live on. But say you need to like update that metadata, it's really it really falls on the individual who owns the IPFS URL backing that metadata, right? So if you want to ensure determinism, then you have to secure your access to that IPFS metadata. It's a point of centralization. The point of hosting it on IPFS is so you don't have to worry yourself so much about, data availability or, losing a hosting provider. IPFS does a really good job of decentralizing data storage. Just out of curiosity, all right. So, sorry guys, I ran over time. This will be the last question for today, and then I'll wrap it up. Just out of curiosity, how do marketplaces ensure permanence of NFT ownership if the platform shuts down? All right. So, ownership of an NFT is not determined by the marketplace. It's determined by the NFT smart contract. So, when I mint an NFT, right? Like my address owns that token ID, and that's defined by the NFT smart contract, right? Anybody can query that token ID and see who owns it, right? That smart contract will only allow the owner of that token ID to transfer that token to another wallet, right? All the marketplace is doing is listing that NFT for sale. And then in order to actually conduct the sale and do it, you as the owner have to give that smart contract permission to transfer your NFT if the sale terms are met. Right? So if you list an NFT for sale and the marketplace goes down, that marketplace smart contract is still on the blockchain, right? So you should still be able to interact with that smart contract and delist your NFT for sale, right? Now, not having a front end to do that makes it difficult, but it's technically possible, right? And, that's one of the beauties of Quai Network with, the metadata being uploaded to IPFS. Like, everybody can see, all the functions available to all these smart contracts and with AI, you could really quickly like build a tool to interact with it. If the smart contract is verified on QuaiScan, you can interact with it directly on QuaiScan. And so that's why like there are these like best practices, right? Verify your smart contract, do everything on chain that makes sense. And then if your website goes down, people can still like interact with your marketplace, with your protocol. Right. Now, marketplaces that don't do that aren't necessarily risky. It's just something you have to keep in mind, right? But these are great questions, guys. Thanks for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. Shout out to everybody hanging out with us over on X. We do this every Monday. Today, our core engineers are traveling, spreading the good word of Quai Network. We got folks in new places in America out there at Token 2049. We got other engineers working hard, bringing SOAP to life. So super excited for all of that. Really appreciate the questions. Hopefully I was able to answer, most of them fairly well. Feel free to follow up with myself or any of the engineers over in the developer Discord. If you have more questions, come back tomorrow for a community space where, we'll get to hear from some of our builders out there who are building cool stuff on Quai Network, get some updates from them. They'll be sharing ways you can engage with their projects. Really excited for that. I see Talkin and Quai Squad down in the audience. Definitely give those accounts a follow. They're building some cool stuff. Really looking forward to those projects launching. I saw Rockster hanging out over in Discord. Keep your eyes peeled for their project as well. Give the Quai Network account a follow. We got some cool updates coming out real soon. And yeah, guys, really appreciate having you today. Happy Monday. Here's to an amazing, beautiful week building on Quai Network. Tune in to my account tomorrow evening. We'll be live streaming. We'll be building, continuing to build an ERC20, a token contract, and DApp on Quai Network. You can follow along in the GitHub repos posted under those spaces on my account. And if you're new around here, go get some Quai. Go sign up at kipper.money. You'll be able to get 20 Quai just for onboarding. And then you can go and tip your favorite content creators on X. Create some content, engage with the Quai Network content, and you'll get tipped pretty quickly. Our community is pretty cracked on Kipper. Christopher and myself, Veronica's back. We're tipping everybody here on X. So that's a really easy way to earn some Quai. If you need more, check us out on Mexi, Gate.io, and LBank. And then you can swap for Quai on Let's Exchange. We are on the Kraken roadmap. You're still early here at Quai Network, so stay tuned for more. We also have the wormhole integration, first major bridge coming to Quai Network. We are keeping proof of work super cool. We are innovating far more than the rest of the ecosystem at this point. Lots of cool stuff happening in proof of work, guys. Definitely stick around for more. I will see you all next week. Hopefully, the engineers are back from their travels then. I imagine Jonathan will be at least. If not, catch you guys tomorrow on What Did You Do Last Week. Wednesday is the Tech AMA with Dr. K. And we got a cool Quiet Friday lined up for you guys. So really appreciate everybody tuning in today. Thanks so much. Have an amazing week, and we will catch you all next Monday. Rock on. All right. See you guys. Thanks for the time today.